Upon discovering that her parents had bequeathed their entire estate solely to her sister, Xenia ceased covering their household expenses. A month later, her mother reached out. "My dear daughter, the utility bills have arrived." Olga's voice chimed, her call an unexpected interruption that Xenia answered due to the lack of anticipation for it. "Before proceeding, could you share from which country you are viewing this content? We hope you enjoy what follows." Xenia, as was her habit, stood by the kitchen counter, her gaze distant as she scrutinized the figures on her laptop. The task of settling her parents' apartment bills was a familiar chore, one she had diligently performed every month for many years: electricity, gas, water, internet. Without her intervention, Olga and Victor seemed utterly incapable of managing these responsibilities. She let out a sigh. It wasn't the effort that weighed on her, but rather a recurring sense of being a tireless workhorse, bearing the entire family's burden. Her younger sibling, Alisa, was likely at that very moment selecting a new ensemble for an upcoming social gathering or engaged in animated gossip sessions with her friends. Alisa inhabited a different sphere, one of effortless indulgence where bills magically took care of themselves and challenges resolved with an unseen hand. Xenia harbored no envy for her. Rather, she occasionally yearned for a touch more acknowledgement. Olga, her mother, frequently told Alisa that she required greater independence. "Xenia is the creative one," she would say, "and you, my dear Ksyushenka, are the pragmatic one. You always find the most effective solution." Xenia consistently did. She worked as an accountant for a firm, managed the household affairs, and provided assistance to her parents. Alisa, in Olga's description, was the creative spirit, flitting from one pastime to another, from photography workshops to paid dance classes. These pursuits were, of course, funded by the family coffers, largely replenished by Xenia. On this particular day, after her workday and all its accompanying obligations, Xenia resolved to visit her parents. She brought along their preferred Prague cake and a fine bottle of wine, desiring nothing more than to sit with them, engage in a heartfelt conversation, and feel like an integral part of the family rather than a mere provider of resources. Upon entering their residence, she found Olga bustling about in the kitchen, while Victor, her father, was seated in his usual spot before the television, engrossed in a sports broadcast. "Ksyushenka, my dear, do come in," Olga greeted her with evident warmth. "It's wonderful that you stopped by." "Yes, daughter." Victor looked up from the screen. "You're a little later than usual today." "Work, Dad," Xenia replied. The evening unfolded with its customary routine. They shared tea and cake, discussing current events. Olga voiced her frustrations about politicians, while Victor chimed in with his usual commentary on Elisa's neighbors, a topic that Ksenia found herself considering with a faint pang of irritation, assuming her sister had little else to occupy her time. After tea, Xenia offered to assist her mother with tidying up. Olga readily agreed, and together they commenced sorting through accumulated belongings in the pantry. Xenia found this activity rather unpleasant. The pantry was invariably dusty and cramped, and Olga stubbornly refused to discard items of perceived value. It was there, amidst a collection of old photographs, faded letters, and other relics of the past, that Xenia discovered a small envelope bearing the inscription, "Will." Her curiosity was piqued. She understood that perusing private correspondence was inappropriate, yet the envelope seemed to beckon her, promising the revelation of a hidden truth. Ksenia swiftly opened the envelope and unfolded the document within. Her heart began to race uncontrollably. As she read, a profound sense of horror washed over her with each passing line. The will explicitly and unequivocally declared that all of Olga and Victor's assets, including their apartment, bank accounts, and Dasha, were to be transferred as the sole property of Alisa. A wave of indignation surged within her, accompanied by anger and profound disappointment. How could they have done this to her? To the one who had consistently been present, who had always offered support, who had consistently prioritized their welfare above her own? She carefully placed the will back into the envelope and concealed it within her pocket. Olga returned to the pantry. "What did you find in there, Kshushenka?" she inquired, peering into the box. "Nothing of significance, Mother," Ksenia responded, endeavoring to maintain an even tone. "Just some old photographs." She spent the remainder of the evening in a daze, attempting to feign smiles and participate in conversations, while inwardly a tempest raged. She felt utterly betrayed, deceived, and profoundly alone. As the time for her departure approached, Olga embraced her goodbye. "Thank you, daughter, for coming," she said. "We always feel so happy when you're here." Ksenia simply nodded. She was incapable of uttering a single word, fearing that her emotions would overwhelm her. In that moment, Ksenia made a firm decision. No more settling bills, no more dispensing medications, no more assisting around the house. Let Eliza, the favored one and designated heir, now assume responsibility for her parents' needs. She telephoned Marina, her closest confidant. "Marina, I need to speak with you," she conveyed, her voice barely containing her tears. "Everything is exceptionally dire." "What has happened, Kshusha?" Marina inquired, her concern evident. "Is everything all right with your parents?" "My parents are fine," Ksenia affirmed, "but I am in a terrible state. I need you to listen to me." Marina arrived within 30 minutes. Ksenia recounted the entire ordeal, omitting no detail. Marina listened attentively, offering a comforting embrace to her friend at intervals. "Kshusha, I scarcely know what to say," Marina remarked once Ksenia had concluded her narrative. "It is absolutely appalling." "I know," Ksenia replied. "I simply cannot comprehend how they could have acted this way." "They made a mistake, Ksyusha," Marina stated. "But that does not necessitate your enduring suffering because of it. You have every right to your own life and your own happiness." "I know," Ksenia reiterated, "and I have resolved that I will no longer remain silent. I will no longer sacrifice myself for those who fail to recognize my contributions." "Kshusha, I support you," Marina affirmed. "Thank you, Marina," Ksenia responded. "You always offer your support." "How could it be otherwise?" Marina countered. "We are friends." Ksenia understood that a challenging period lay ahead, and her initial step toward this new chapter was the firm resolve to cease managing her parents' financial obligations. Initially, a deceptive sense of tranquility pervaded Olga and Victor's household, as if no change had occurred. The couple had not yet depleted their existing supply of medications, and the familiar rhythm of their daily lives remained undisturbed. Victor, as was his custom, grumbled about the morning television program, while Olga busied herself with domestic chores. The television continued its drone of news, and they did not immediately register Ksenia's absence. At first, Olga attributed Ksenia's lack of presence to her being occupied, likely at work. She mentioned this to Victor, who in turn dismissed it. "Where would she go? She'll come running like the sweet girl she is," he muttered, his attention engrossed in his newspaper. Nevertheless, the days passed, and Ksenia made no appearance. There were no calls, no visits, not even a brief message. Olga began to grow genuinely concerned. She attempted to contact her daughter multiple times, but her calls went unanswered. She then reached out to Marina, Ksenia's closest friend, hoping to glean at least some information. "Marina, hello. This is Olga, Ksenia's mother. How are you?" she began in a voice laced with excessive politeness. "Hello, Olga," Marina Ivanovna replied with reserved cordiality. "We are well. And you?" "Yes, I am worried about Kshusha. She has simply vanished. She doesn't call, she doesn't visit." "Have you happened to see her?" Olga inquired. "We have seen each other, of course," Marina responded. "Kshusha is quite busy at the moment. She has a great deal on her plate." "What has happened? Why isn't she communicating with us?" Olga pressed. "Perhaps we have offended her in some way." "You would be better off asking her directly, Olga Ivanovna," Marina stated. "I cannot divulge other people's confidences." Olga felt a growing irritation at Marina's evasiveness. "Well, at least give me a hint. What is going on? I am her mother, after all." "She requires time and space," Marina advised. "She will inform you of everything herself when she is ready. In the meantime, I apologize, But I must conclude this call." Marina terminated the conversation, leaving Olga in a state of complete bewilderment. She shared the exchange with Victor, who merely scoffed in annoyance. "What a friend," he declared. "She keeps repeating time and space like a parrot. What utter nonsense!" However, deep down, Victor also began to feel a prickle of unease regarding Xenia's absence and the erosion of their usual certainty about her. The first genuine alarm bell sounded when the utility bills arrived in their mailbox. Olga, acting out of ingrained habit, retrieved them, intending to set them aside until Ksenia's arrival. It was then that the realization dawned: they would now have to contend with these matters themselves. She hesitated, but quickly found herself overwhelmed. She contacted the management company, but the response was curt, demanding the personal account number, information she had no idea how to access. Ultimately, she hung up in frustration. "Vitya, what are we to do?" she pleaded. Victor frowned and took the bills into his hands. He studied them for a considerable time, his eyes scanning the fragmented details. He was accustomed to his daughter always managing these responsibilities, shielding him from unnecessary complexities. "All right, we will figure it out," he muttered, though his own confidence was wavering. They spent the entire day attempting to decipher the process of paying the utilities. By the end, they managed to settle the bills, but it came at a significant cost of effort and frayed nerves. That evening, as they processed the events, particularly through a video call, they first truly grasped the extent of their reliance on Xenia. They understood that she had not merely assisted them, she had in fact sustained their very existence. Now, with her support withdrawn, they found themselves utterly helpless. Olga could no longer bear it and called Ksenia again. This time, her daughter answered. "Daughter, what has happened? Why aren't you calling?" Olga inquired with palpable agitation. "And what happened to you? Don't you have Elisa?" Ksenia responded pointedly. "She is your heir. Let her take care of you now." Olga fell silent, stunned by Ksenia's words. For the first time, she heard such profound resentment and bitterness in her daughter's voice. "But Ksyusha, we are your parents. How can you say that? And how could you have done this to me?" Ksenia countered. "All my life I supported you, and you chose to abandon me for someone who barely remembers you?" We just wanted her to have a future," Olga stammered, a lump forming in her throat. "And what about my future? I was supposed to work for you and Elisa my entire life." "No, of course not. We didn't think—" "That's precisely it. You never thought about me," Ksenia interrupted icily. "Now live as you know how. I will no longer be doing so." She terminated the call, leaving Olga in tears. She turned to Victor and recounted the conversation with their daughter. Victor remained silent, his head bowed. He felt a profound sense of guilt and bewilderment. He recognized the grave error they had made in prioritizing Elisa, but the question of how to rectify the situation loomed large. A month elapsed. Xenia diligently attempted to put her parents out of her mind, immersing herself in her work and her ceramics. She utilized the pottery wheel as an outlet for the emotions swirling within her, shaping vases, cups, and small figurines, imbuing them with her suppressed anger, her resentment, and surprisingly, a flicker of hope. Meanwhile, a starkly different atmosphere prevailed in Olga and Victor's apartment. Soon, financial difficulties were compounded by health issues. Victor's blood pressure medication ran out, and he began to feel unwell. They had no more at the pharmacy, and obtaining a new prescription proved challenging. "We need to call Elisa," Olga stated resignedly. "Perhaps she can help." Elisa, predictably, was occupied. She was preparing for a party with friends, and her parents' call was an unwelcome interruption. "Mom, what is it?" she asked with evident annoyance. Olga, attempting to conceal her desperation, replied, "Perhaps you could assist us a little." Elisa sighed. "Mom, I've already told you, things are not easy for me at work right now either. I'm completely swamped. And besides, I'm not Ksyusha, capable of solving all your problems. Try to manage on your own for a change." Without waiting for a response, Elisa disconnected the call. Olga, her shoulders slumping, met Victor's gaze. In his eyes, she saw a reflection of her own fear and disappointment. "What shall we do?" she whispered. Victor remained silent, feeling utterly helpless and burdened by guilt. Alisa, having put down her phone, experienced a pang of remorse. She knew her parents currently required assistance, but the thought of disrupting her plans was deeply unappealing. A party, new connections, the opportunity to share stylish photographs on Instagram, all these seemed far more significant to her than addressing someone's health concerns. Later, Olga attempted to persuade Alisa to resume her previous responsibilities. "Ksyusha, hi," she said, striving to infuse her voice with as much warmth as possible. "The thing is, the parents need assistance. Perhaps you might reconsider and help them." Upon hearing her sister's voice, Ksenia felt a surge of anger. "Alice, you're quite something. You know perfectly well why I no longer assist our parents. It's cold out there, and one must survive. I am responsible for the fact that you do not wish to care for them. You are the heir, after all. So, attend to your duties." Alisa attempted to interject, but Ksenia cut her off. "Do not call me again. I do not have time for idle chatter." She hung up. Alisa felt both humiliated and insulted, tossing her phone onto the couch. "What a—" she hissed. "How could she do that to her parents?" She concluded that Ksenia was simply envious of her, jealous of her beauty, her achievements, her carefree existence. How else could she account for Ksenia's perceived cruelty and indifference? Her parents made further attempts to communicate with Ksenia, but she maintained her distance. Olga called repeatedly, seeking to initiate a conversation, but Ksenia offered only evasive replies, citing busyness and fatigue. She was disinclined to engage in lengthy explanations, fearing she would break down and release the pent-up emotions. She required time to process the events and determine her next course of action. "Ksyushenka," Olga's voice broke on the phone. "Why are you acting like a stranger? We are your parents, are we not? Can you not understand us?" "Understand what, mother?" Ksenia retorted dryly. "You have been exploiting me for years, and now that I am no longer convenient, you suddenly remember that I am your daughter." Victor also attempted to engage Ksenia in conversation, but his efforts proved even less successful. He was a man of few words, finding it difficult to articulate his emotions. He would simply call and remain silent on the line, hoping Ksenia would initiate the dialogue. However, Ksenia maintained her silence in response, and the call would invariably conclude. They began to ponder how to regain her trust. Olga and Victor spent many evenings discussing the unfolding situation. They meticulously replayed every instance where they had favored Alisa, where they had overlooked Ksenia's efforts, where they had taken her care for granted. "We were blind," Olga confessed, wiping away tears. "We only saw what we wished to see. We assumed Ksyusha would always be there, that she wouldn't go anywhere. But she is a person too. She has feelings." "We should have considered this sooner," Victor grumbled. "Now we are adrift, because the responsibility for our parents does not fall upon us." After several unsuccessful attempts to help her with bill payments and medication purchases, Alisa began to avoid their calls. The situation was challenging for her. She was not accustomed to such a life. She was used to receiving, not giving. "Why did I even confide in my friend on the phone?" she mused. "Why should I have to pay for them? Ksyuka is far wealthier anyway. She can help." Her friend, however, was not inclined to offer her support. She recognized Alisa's inherent spoiled and selfish nature and felt little sympathy for her predicament. "It is entirely your own doing," her friend stated. "You have always taken advantage of the fact that Ksyusha funded everything for all of you, and now that she has ceased doing so, you are suddenly offended. It is rather peculiar." Alisa terminated the call. Angered by her friend's response, she felt cornered. On one hand, she did not wish to shoulder the responsibility. On the other, she understood that if she did not intervene, her parents might face dire consequences. Ksenia experienced a sense of liberation, yet within her soul, the pain of betrayal lingered. She continued to attend her ceramics classes, where she found solace and an avenue for emotional expression. Marina offered her unwavering support, recognizing Ksenia's newfound independence and her need for understanding. "Do not hold a grudge against your parents," Marina advised. "They are still your parents. They made a mistake, but they have recognized it. Grant them an opportunity to manage." Xenia remained silent, unsure of how to respond. She understood the validity of Marina's words, but forgiving her parents was a formidable challenge. The hurt ran too deep. Olga, still reluctant to extend forgiveness, contacted Xenia and informed her of their decision. "Ksyushenka, we have redrafted everything," Olga announced. "Now it will be divided equally between you and Alisa. We realized that we were unjust towards you." Xenia listened silently before replying, "It is not about the inheritance, Mother. The issue is that you did not appreciate me. You took my efforts for granted while idolizing Alisa simply for her presence. I required time to process this." Despite her internal conflict, Xenia observed a gradual softening within herself. She saw her parents' earnest efforts to rectify their past mistakes and witnessed how difficult their lives had become without her assistance. She sensed her anger slowly yielding to a burgeoning sympathy. One evening, as Xenia was engaged in her ceramics work, Alisa called. Her voice conveyed a palpable sense of worry and fear. "Ksyusha, Dad is not well," Alisa reported. "He requires an urgent operation and we do not have the funds. Please, help us." Xenia froze. A lump of clay clutched in her hands. She was aware of Victor's long-standing heart condition, but she had not anticipated the severity of his situation. "What has happened?" Xenia inquired, attempting to maintain her composure. Alice elaborated that Victor had suffered an attack, and the doctors indicated the necessity of an immediate surgical procedure. The cost of the operation was substantial, and they lacked the requisite financial resources. "Mom, in her panic," Alice continued, "tried to find the money, but nothing is working out. Please, Ksyusha, assist us." Xenia remained silent, contemplating what she had heard. She understood that her father's life hinged on her decision. She could refuse to help, and Victor might perish, but she also recognized that assisting them might lead to her parents reverting to their old patterns of exploitation. "I will consider it," Xenia stated before ending the call. Two opposing forces warred within her, resentment and love. Resentment towards her parents for their past injustices, and love for her father, whom she did not wish to lose. Ultimately, love prevailed. Xenia resolved to assist her father, knowing it would be arduous and that she might again face their ingratitude. She contacted Alice and informed her that she would help secure the funds for the operation. Alice was overjoyed and expressed her profound gratitude. Xenia began reaching out to friends and acquaintances, seeking their assistance. Through their collective efforts, the necessary amount was amassed, and Victor underwent the operation. The surgery was successful, and Victor began to recover. When Xenia visited her father, Olga approached her and embraced her. "Thank you, Ksyushenka," Olga said, tears streaming down her face. "You saved his life. We will never forget this." "I appreciate your words," Xenia responded, "but I cannot return to how things were. I no longer wish to be a mere financial resource. I want to live my life according to my own desires." Olga and Victor exchanged glances. They understood that Xenia had the right to her own life. "We are not asking for everything to revert to how it was, Ksyusha," Olga said. "We simply want you to know that we love you and that we are deeply sorry for how you were treated." Xenia nodded. That was precisely what she had longed to hear: acknowledgement, an apology, and understanding. In that moment, she realized that a true family is not defined by blood ties alone, but by mutual support and care, and that forgiveness is the essential element for healing and reconciliation.